Hey everyone, it is Thursday, January 21st, 2021, 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. UTC. I think sometimes we've gotten that wrong in the past. I'm pretty sure that's right. Um, and it's a good day because it's exactly a week after the mainnet launch. So I'm sure all of us are still um, riding high from that big event. This is working group call number 32, and I am joined by Harold, Jason, Sean, Jude, Ryan, Dan, and Tadia. So with that, unless there's something urgent, we'll go right into stand-ups, and I will just go through stand-ups based on who I see um, on my Zoom list. So the first person is Harold. Harold, what are you working on right now? Any blockers, and what do you expect to happen over the next 2 weeks?
Yes. Thank you kindly. Yeah, so I've been what I'm working on currently today, and for the rest of today, is related to the voting mechanism that we've been trying to suss out for a while now. And I was excited to learn that some of the ideas that I had to avoid building an app from scratch was also going on in the MetaGov Slack, where they're combining a bunch of different tools to be able to get their desired decision making mechanism sorted out. And one of the things that they're actually looking for is something that I was hoping to get done with this voting mechanism, which is attaching stacks auth for identity and storage for any voting mechanism or decision making mechanism options that we have for the community and testing options. And so yes, I can show a little bit more on that later. I've added things like SourceCred and Lumio to the different tools that we can use to get done some of the original ideas that Jude had for time triggers and quorums and things like this that I think could be important even in the testing phases. So yes, I don't see any particular blockers for that. And over the next 2 weeks, I hope to be able to get some of this testing actually started and done, feedback from the community. Um, and as also other things, as folks know, I've been very involved with the Indigenous Council and the Tua Wampum efforts, specifically for STEAM and education as it relates to this community, attaching Web3 infrastructure to education efforts in indigenous modes of production through the bleeding edge of digital fabrication efforts, material development efforts in the same digital fabrication realm. And so, yeah, we're excited about potential Web3 data models that can show, some systems design for bottom up uh, uh, means to uh, an ethical data ecosystem future to attach to Web3 that we can focus on through things like collections building in this community to help start a conversation between folks in data and folks in development and folks on the ground in terms of what's possible for an ethical Web3. So I think this data ecosystem, as opposed to the one we have now, will be important to start sussing out and building out through collections, having that conversation in a good way. So some of the blockers that I see for that actually recently Dan's brought to my attention that app change isn't fully specced out. I know that's important for a lot of the infrastructure ideas we had there. What will happen in the next 2 weeks is hopefully another meeting with Eglash and some more folks. There was some folks, there's a Danielle Wood from MIT who will be important for some of our prototyping efforts with this STEAM education effort because it also involves indigenous modes for moon protection, space protection, and midwifery protection. And so we hope that a comparative dialogue with the Tua Wampum Council can give us some rapid prototyping ideas that we also hope to document in a very unique way. But also some contacts from the UN through Kernel are coming through the line in regards to that as well, mentioning this collections ideas, and we're excited about that as well. So, yeah, yeah, so I mentioned blockers that I see there, and that's what I see happening next 2 weeks. But I'll end there. Thank you kindly.
Thanks, Harold. Jason?
All right, so mine is short and sweet. My work for the next 2 weeks and what I'm working on right now is finishing up just my milestones from my grant, which is based around the GitHub cleanup. And no real blockers at this time. I'll be working with Jenny to download some of the videos from all our different recordings in the past. And I'm just starting to catch up things like the call tables and some of the resources that we had put together so we can start making that a regular thing again. So that's it for me.
Thanks, Jason. Sean, anything you'd like to share?
Well, it's just left over from the meeting this morning, right, where we were talking about the community board seat, and Brittany made it clear that they were more interested in engaging with the community than in a single individual that had the specific set of skills that were outlined. And so I was interested in potentially going down this path myself, possibly becoming a board member. And I'm looking into how we might accomplish that. I could put in a proposal for what the board member would do. You know, depending on how detailed everybody wants it, that could take more or less time. So maybe grant is necessary depending on the questions, but I was going to start without that. And, you know, so the basic premise, though, is that the type of work that I've started with Harold would be continued on a broader scale, looking for people who are trying to engage with the community, find people with different expertise, find people who want to contribute, and taking what the board is trying to accomplish or the organization is trying to accomplish and engaging the community on those things. And in the process, you know, you might have a regular meeting that becomes standard. There might be bylaws that need to be changed. That would be done by the board seat. There might be, you know, governance and consensus algorithms that we come up with. We may end up coding something that becomes a tool that allows us to engage. All these things, I believe, are part of the initial board member to define over time. And then as other people come along with specific expertise and skills relative to, you know, whatever the board and the community need at that time, they would hopefully have a you know, nice paved, cleared road out in front of them where they can apply their skills and not have to start in the middle, you know, of a forest with no infrastructure. And that's basically the direction I'm thinking right now. Any thoughts? Does that seem reasonable? Do other people know of someone who is interested in this seat? You know, thoughts about how we might accomplish this? Because the next board meeting is on February 5th.
I see Brittany's on the call. Brittany, is there any color that you want to add to what Sean mentioned?
Yeah, I think if we talked a little bit in the ecosystem call earlier today, but yeah, just I think Sean summarized it well. Basically, this community board seat, so having community representation at the board level, which doesn't mean it has to be a single person. It can be, you know, different, you know, a handful of people who show up and kind of go and represent the community interests and conversations. They can then, you know, document and bring things back to the community. I think like that, totally on board to have that start. Like I said, our next board, as he mentioned, is February 5th, which is coming up soon. So even if it's just like still work in progress, but we want to send someone as an observer and kind of test this process out and see what we need, I'm very much on board with that, and the board is open to that. So I think it's like a real opportunity. But then, yeah, just like how do we determine who that person is, and how they get selected or who the multiple people are or how they represent the community interest. I think those are all open questions that I would love for the community to weigh in on, as Sean sort of said. And I know we have an open issue with these exact sort of like parameters in it. So in some ways I want to be more hands off in that, but basically saying like, there is a green light. Let's see how we can kind of experiment and make this a really great experience for the community, for the board, for getting what we want.
Cool.
To
Thank you both for
apologize,
that.
my fire alarm is going off, but it sounds like they're doing a test right now. I hope it's not annoying to everyone. I think the next step is to have a proposal ready for the board on February 5th.
I would also add, since this person or this group of people will be representing the community, I am curious to see how this person or group of people would go about figuring out the most pressing issues for community members. So I would assume that's in the proposal, but is this someone who is very present on Discord, very present on Telegram, who has sort of an omnipresent way of being with community, that they are really tapped into what's going on? Or is this person going to be, as you mentioned, Sean, more focused on figuring out the tools that are needed to make decisions and that are needed to help surface issues? Sometimes I'm very much in support of having a community representative at the board level. I sometimes worry about like a solution in search of a problem, right? So you have a representative who's there to amplify the voices of community members and to address issues that may not be getting priority for community members. But so you have that person who's there, but do they have issues to actually lobby for? And do they know what those issues are if they're there? Does that make sense?
Fire alarm went off.
Great.
It's done. Yes, it makes sense. You mentioned having solutions looking for a problem. I think that once it gets started, it's more or less a clean slate, meaning that once a proposal is accepted, then you start anew. There's things that have been said about different tools and different approaches, and those were all part of the conversation to find out what the community board seat was, what was expected of it, what it would be first, and so then you just start anew at that point. In terms of the, are you creating internal tools or are you engaging? I think that has to be some internal tool process, so that way you don't leave the next person without institutional knowledge and processes to engage, thereby reducing the amount of effort it takes for a new person to get started with the community. But that said, part of doing that properly is having an actual issue that you need to communicate or resolve, or whatever the case may be. And so it's going to be a hybrid between the two. This is the way I see it.
Thank you. Okay. Unless there are like pressing questions on this, we can probably revisit it at the end during discussion and move forward with stand-ups. Anyone? Okay, great. Dan, you're next on my list. Do you have a stand-up to share related to governance?
No, I do not.
Okay. So Juliet is next. Juliet, would you like to share anything? Oh, can't hear you. I don't know if Juliet plans to dial in. Okay, for now, we can save Juliet for later. I'm going to move down to Tadia. Tadia, do you have any stand-ups you'd like to share?
No, I paused.
Okay. Jude?
No, not right now.
All right. Ryan?
Not specifically governance related, no.
Okay. Great. So I will go. What are my stand-ups? So one of the things I've been working on that I have mentioned here on the group is that Discord bot. So I think progress on that has been slow because one of the team members that we have is caught up with a different project. So Jonathan, the developer that I'm working with, Jonathan and I have decided to move forward with deploying the bot to the server, but not before we contact the community members who've been involved in testing. But to give you an idea of what that'll look like, once this auto moderation bot is deployed to the Stack server, there will be a mechanism in place where community members can enroll in a community moderator role. So it's a level 1 community moderator role. And because we don't want to be, well, because we can't pull any very specific information about user activity on Discord, the way that the process will work for confirming those new moderators is that the existing moderators, so presumably the community members who have been testing the bot and other core community members who are interested in gaining the privileges of a moderator in our server, would approve other people who want to be moderators. That might sound confusing, but in this first phase of testing the bot on our actual server, basically people will be able to enroll in these moderator roles automatically. So the idea is that the community can share moderation privileges, and someone like me or Mitchell will no longer have like super admin or ownership access to the server. We're going to transfer ownership to a dummy account that belongs to the Stacks community, and the keys to that account would only be available in situations of emergency, but even people like the PBC team wouldn't have ownership access to the server. So that is part of decentralizing ownership and distributing privileges. So that's what you can expect for the bot. I think that is meant to happen in the next week or so. And the exciting thing about the bot is that once it's deployed and we work through the different moderator privileges and roles, Jonathan will actually be able to work on some more sophisticated features like reputation tracking. That sounds more serious than it is, but it's really similar to what Harold showed us 2 weeks ago with SourceCred. But based on your Discord activity or GitHub activity, you'd be able to prove that you've been in the server for a certain amount of time and you have a certain amount of experience with the community, which is really helpful when we are trying to figure out who in the community or who has certain weights to their votes on community decisions. So that's what you can expect this quarter. What you can expect in the next week or two is seeing that bot operational on the Stack server. And as there are no blockers, we were running into issues with just developing the criteria for being a moderator or having a moderator role, but that's just going to get done by Monday or Tuesday, and that'll be shared with all of you who are helping us with testing. So yeah, no blockers as of now.
Can I jump in to give
Sure.
my hello?
Yes, Juliet. Hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you. So I've been working on the grant work, the code of conduct, and in the next 2 weeks, I expect that we'll see the RFC, request for comment on the code for conduct. Over the past month, I've been going through the different codes of conduct, looking at the one that was originally put up by the development team, and also looking at a number of them from Python to Django to many to take a look at. One thing I think dovetails with what you raised a moment ago with the moderation is a code of enforcement. And I see that the new Covenant version has a code of enforcement within the code of conduct. So I find that really interesting. Initially, I thought there might need to be a separate code of conduct, which is similar to what Mozilla does. But I think we can put it into our code of conduct. So a separate code of enforcement like Mozilla, but I think we can put it in our code of conduct and then share that with the community through the RFC process. and then have people comment on it, and then we can use what Harold is doing to vote on it eventually. So so next 2 weeks, the RFC and the code of conduct to be put up for the community to take a look at and comment on.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Juliet. Really looking forward to seeing that. Does anyone have any questions on any of the stand-ups that were shared? No. Okay, great. So we can move on to the foundation updates. I'll click on this as well. Brittany, is there anything you want to share from the foundation side?
I think the main thing, it was in our ecosystem call as well. We've upgraded our grants proposal process from GitHub, and now it's hosted on our own server through a interface called grant.io. So if you haven't checked that out yet, you can. It's just at stacks.org/grants. So trying to make it easier for people to get like notifications when things are going on, and like being able to comment. So I would love to have people continue to add comments. Also, thanks to the folks who have already applied for grants. And as we're kind of transitioning over this new interface, you may, have your grant migrated. So hopefully not a bad thing, but we hope to get more feedback on grants. And hopefully this tool will help make it easier to do that. But yeah, that's the main thing on my front. I mean, obviously the launch last week was a big thing. And I know many of you were in attendance to those events. So happy to give, answer any questions about any launch stuff later in the call too, if you'd like.
Thanks, Brittany. And these were mentioned. I don't know if we want to discuss anything more, Sean, about the board seat or board nominations, if there's been any progress there.
There has been discussions, and I'm happy to talk about them, but I don't have something prepared.
Okay. All right, so unless anyone has questions on that, we can pursue that asynchronously. We can go into action items. So,
and actually, I'll jump in on that one because we don't have a ton of action items. So this,
I was gonna say.
Yeah, there's just a 3. They're a part of my grant backlog. So nothing that we need to get into today, but of course, anyone's able to view them, able to comment on them, and leave any feedback, but we don't have to spend any time going through those. But I do want people to know, if you'll just hit the new issue button. I think we highlighted this last week too, but I just wanted to show everybody. Oh, that's right.
Sorry, I still haven't logged in on Brave.
That's all right. So basically there's issue templates now. So if you do want to add, like I normally do the agendas, but if anybody wants to add an agenda for the next meeting, an action item, discussion item, foundation item, very straightforward, adds the label for you, descriptions in there, and you're good to go. So that's all I wanted to share in relation to that.
Cool, thanks, Jason. And we'll go into discussion items as well. All right, we normally go through these one by one. Since we do that sort of every meeting, I wonder if we can just go through these, and if the person in charge of them wants to talk about them, we can, or if there's nothing to add, we can move on. Does that sound okay?
I'm okay with that, and I would also say that anything that's labeled with the grant backlog, we can kind of gloss over unless somebody wants some more detail, or again, anybody's welcome to open these, comment these, review these, but we don't have to spend the time going through it on the call today.
Harold, do you want to say anything else about the Steam update?
Yes, I'll say just a brief things that are there. There's a link there to a recording of the Zoom that happened on the 12th that includes Ronnie Glass from the Generative Justice Research Group. We're excited to start working with him on this prototype. That below, I've tried to highlight some work streams that I think are possible, and asking for feedback. I could add this to action items today to add to that list there, so folks know to look here in terms of any feedback, potential blockers outside of the app change that they see, just any feedback in terms of technical uh, things that are possible, not possible. So yeah, I'll be updating that as well to include the next scheduling for the next meeting for this small prototype that is mentioned. Hopefully, can give our ecosystem some models for both, ethical data of the future. Ecosystem building in that regard, but also important R&D for governance that we've mentioned before in this space. Uh, of blockchain-based systems. There's been folks like Primavera De Filippi, folks who is included in the MetaGov project, who have been very inspirational to some of the foundational research of this working group in terms of, looking outside of conventional means for governance, because as we all know, there aren't too many conventional means that don't end us up in the same pitfalls or basins of attraction. So this is important, we feel, for long-term sustainability of blockchain-based systems. Yeah, we're excited that this small prototype really embodies a lot of what we hope to be doing for a while. And yeah, I'll stop there for that. Thank you.
Yeah, quick question. So when you do come out with the prototype, what's the most important thing that we can help with? Is it promoting, sharing, making sure that it's getting enough feedback, or something else?
Yeah, the timeline is, like I said, there's still some infrastructure blockers that I'm sure, like, as the miracles are worked for this launch, they'll continue to be done in terms of app change and things like this that are very exciting. So as soon as it does come into fruition, even some of the documentation we hope to do for even before it's getting built will be very helpful to have promotion or support in any kind of way, of course. And down the line, mentioned before, any technical help, there's going to be a lot of token engineering that it's going to be very unique and as it relates to this Matrilineal Indigenous Council and some of the things that we're trying to get done in terms of bottom-up systems design. And I think it's going to be very interesting, some of the engineering approaches that end up getting concluded on. So that stuff's important for us too. So thank you, Connie, for asking.
Thanks, Harold. Okay. I put this one up. This was just an issue to collect project management updates on Harold and Juliet's work streams. So it's still the case that we can follow all your progress there, right, Harold and Juliet?
Yes, as far as for both of us, I think we have links there and updates that we both have been putting in. Harold is putting in everything weekly, and I have some new updates that I just put in there. And so I'm interested in people taking a look at my updates, and Harold, I'm sure, he can speak for himself, but I'm sure that he's interested in having people take a look at his updates as well and comment. I know that with the code of conduct, I would really like people to take a look at what's going on. I'm doing a work in the open approach, so there'll be changes every single day or every other day maybe, with the documents that are there, that you'll see what I'm working on, and you'll see what I'm reviewing, and you'll be able to see some of the different code of conduct that are used by other communities, whether it's open source communities like Python or Django or the Covenant. So this is what you're looking at right now is the request for comment. It's in a draft stage right now. So I'm currently working and adding to that each day. If you go to the, towards the bottom, you'll see that there is some various code of conducts from other communities that are within the request for comment. At some point, I'll probably just use the links so you can review them when we put this up on GitHub, and I'll have it more friendly so that people can look at the links and be able to review each of them, as well as there will be one code of conduct that is a draft for our community, which is will be based on many of these that I've reviewed, including the original one that was put up on April 17th by the developers from Blockstack Now Hero.
Great. Thanks, Juliet. Looks like you've got a lot of content to work with here. Okay, and this is, so we can skip over the backlog items, right, Jason?
I do want to mention something from that from the update.
Oh, sure.
It's at the top. I moved it to the top so you wouldn't have to scroll all the way down.
Thanks,
And it's just a few updates that I was mentioning earlier about, you know, as you see here, as Juliet mentioned, I've been pretty much showing you guys what I've been working on, thinking about through the weeks, and this is what I've currently on, and a lot of it's inspired by the work that's being done in MetaGov. As I said, is being done independently of some of the same work that I was doing, and some of the things that I was hoping was possible or just thinking about was possible, they've already started to test out, which is even adding the very polished Lumio, if some of you guys are familiar with it, where it has this very modular decision making and discussion UI. I think would be very, very powerful for our use cases here, where we're trying to leverage SourceCred and PolicyKit, and what it looks like is that you can do some pretty nice things with PolicyKit, where you know, I see them testing that, you know, you can test whether or not you can ask PolicyKit to check whether or not a certain user has a certain amount of cred before, you know, pushing through a certain decision or notifying a user to push through a certain decision or action of any kind in platforms like Discord. And so I was thinking along similar lines, but wondering if we could be a little bit more specific about, you know, if you could imagine a decision-making process where you might want to just make sure, like was kind of referenced earlier about how much time has been in Discord. This would be like a little bit more specific to, okay, these particular posts are, you know, important for this particular decision, and has there been cred that, you know, from this user that has flowed through this particular post. So I'm interested asking questions in the Slack of MetaGov about this, and I hope we'll be working on this for the rest of today in terms of putting together a demo for you guys that puts together all these different tools, and hopefully, you know, I was hoping that we could very quickly get some Stacks Auth usage through Discourse, because the SourceCred plugin has the Discourse plugin, but because that's not active, I still want to try to have the testing, have the Stacks Auth via the OI chat from Friedger that's put together with the Matrix client. So yeah, those are some of the updates about what's going on. And as Juliet said, I'd love some comments, feedback on approaches, strategies. Yeah, so yeah, I'll add it to the actions list as well. Thank you, Connie.
Thanks, Harold. Yeah, really looking forward to the prototype. I wonder if, only if this isn't a lot more to ask, but if you could draw out like a flow chart of what decision making would look like with all these tools, only if it's like straightforward and simple to do. I'd be curious to see what the flow of decision making is like using these different platforms.
No, of course. I think that's a beautiful idea. I see a lot of the flow charts in MetaGov, so I'll take inspiration from that.
I would love to help with that process, or I look forward to seeing it if no help is needed. It's really interesting to see how human practices are reduced to algorithms. It's fun to think about.
Yeah, also just the number of tools you ended up using, Harold, like it kind of illustrates how complicated good decision making is.
Yeah, I was excited to see that MetaGov was thinking along the similar lines, that I wasn't being convoluted in my thinking. So yeah, there's a link there to a Google Doc where MetaGov has put together a lot of work. I think there's some flowcharts there too that you might be interested in. So.
I was muted. I was saying this wasn't exactly the simple flow chart I wasn't imagining, but I'm glad that it's available to look at. Okay, so all right. Okay, so do you want to say anything about our collaboration with Medic? I mean, it looks like you're incorporating them into our work, but this was a different issue proposed by Lane, who isn't here. I don't know, Harold, if you feel comfortable speaking on behalf of Lane for this.
Maybe not on behalf of Lane, but yeah, I've seen Lane in the stacks or in the Slack of Metagov, and I've seen him in some Metagov seminars, and so I know that he's still very much focused on what Metagov is doing. As you can see, they're very much on similar paths as us, and yeah, I think that link there is a pretty good summary of some of the things that they're doing. But I also encourage folks to I think there's some other Metagov links on that same update, and to look through what's going on in their seminars, and yeah, feel free to get access to their Slack and look for yourself. So yeah, I think that sums it up.
All right, thanks, Harold. This was proposed by a community member that we haven't heard from in a while, so I don't think that we necessarily need to go over this, but just so everyone is aware, this was proposed back in July. So if anyone is inspired and feels like they can address this, this is open for more feedback. Backlog, town hall meeting or general public call. So we had our first one today. Ryan, would you want to go over how that went this morning?
Sure, yeah. So that was just included at the end of the Stacks ecosystem calls. So we have them, so they're every 2 weeks. And so next 2 weeks from now will be with the evangelist group. And then 2 weeks after that will be with governance. And so just kind of trial to see how that works. Jason gave an update on all the things that everyone here is doing, which is always a lot. And so it was nice to have some new people hear that. And I think I couldn't see anybody's faces, but I'm sure their mouths were dropped open because there's a lot going on in this committee. Yeah, so that I think went well. And then Sean was able to talk with community board seat to Brittany live in front of some more people outside of the governance area too. So it's nice to have, I think, more people who aren't involved in governance directly be able to hear that kind of stuff. Yeah, so I think it went well. I don't know, I'd be interested to see what everybody else thought who attended.
Yeah, and just a quick note on that too. Everything that I spoke to in the meeting this morning, I actually dropped the same notes in our issue today, just below all the agenda items for reference. I did my best to capture everybody's stuff from GitHub, and I do want to say thank you everyone for using that to do some excellent project management. It was easy for me to walk back and see what everyone was up to. And I hope I got the most up-to-date information for everyone, but I like the idea of that continuing. So I'll make a note that's going to be every other one of those calls, and we'll continue that. I think the more exposure we get, the better on the public side as well.
Well, thanks everybody. Great to have our first one. What was the attendance like, Ryan? I wasn't able to go this morning.
12 total, which was down from last week pre-mainnet. So because last week and the last couple weeks coming into mainnet, it was like 27, 26, 30, around that amount. So today was only 12, and I'm not sure if people were tired of stuff or if it was just different. First time the governance was included on the invite. I don't know if some people might find that complicated and not want to hear that. I don't know. Yeah, so we'll see what the next one's like and see if that's a continued way that people want to do things. But yeah, I'm going to be pushing for more attendance on that, of course.
Okay. Yeah, it's the first one, so
yeah,
I'm sure it can only go up from there. The fireside chat series, and this is another idea that was proposed a while ago. I don't know if anyone has any updated ideas on what we can do here. So the original idea was just to have special guests or invite special guests onto either these working group calls or something a little more public facing to talk about governance in general or governance on Stacks.
To me, I feel like we'll start getting into things like this once we start having a regular cadence with the town hall. But we did leave the issue open just so people can suggest if there's anybody else that they would invite in to talk. We had a few names mentioned, and also the council that Harold's working with, and just trying to find ways to bring other experts in to learn from their experiences and kind of see where we can go next. So that's kind of the background of this one and why it's still open. But definitely, if anybody has any feedback or wants to take a lead on that, I'd imagine it would only be a good thing to just to continue that work.
Great. Thanks, Jason. Okay, so that does it for, aside from these backlog issues, that does it for discussion items. Were there any discussion items that weren't reflected in these issues that we'd like to talk about in our last 12 minutes?
I was just thinking that last one. I know when I shared information about the last meeting that Harold did with Ron English there's a lot of people who, when I shared it with them, they're very interested in Ron English's work. So maybe he could be a person going forward is like to try out this idea, and because to get more press for what he's doing and how it applies to the Stacks ecosystem and things like that. If he'd be open to it, just something came to mind.
Cool. Well, Harold's the one with the link. So if Ron English thinks we're cool enough, maybe he'll want to talk to us more.
Yeah, he's a very nice guy so far. So I'm sure he'd be interested in even himself getting to know exactly what exactly we plan to leverage in blockchain-based systems for that aligns with his long-time work. And yeah, I was also thinking of the council, as Jason mentioned. All this is possibilities, and it's just a matter of scheduling. So yeah, I'll get on it. This was already on my mind for other things going on in kernel. So yeah, of course.
Oh yeah, speaking of kernel, thank you everyone for being flexible because of me, Harold, and Dan doing kernel. We really appreciate it. I know this time works for, it seems to work for a lot of us, but I think the reason that we had tried to do an earlier time was to accommodate other time zones. So we can obviously move back to the 12 o'clock Eastern meetings after kernel is done, or talk about other times that might work for us, but thank you nonetheless. Right, okay, so last 10 minutes, what other discussion topics would we like to cover?
If you scroll down a little bit, I did add a little bit just to the bottom of the agenda. So this week, just so everyone knows, there was 2 other little changes that we're kind of going, well, one change and one event. So the middle one. So the big one, that was my update this morning, and that was just a little bit of what we talked about in the meeting this morning. But if you go up one comment above that one, the 2 things I wanted to cover is the SIPs. So the actual SIPs from Stacks blockchain are officially being moved and will live in the StacksGov repo. They're in both places right now because there's a lot of things that still link to the actual Stacks blockchain location. But right before mainnet launch, Jude, we created a new repo, we moved everything over. And then as we start to develop new community SIPs or any other changes, they'll also live in that StacksGov repo. And you can see that in the issues and pull requests, which is currently where a NFT and FT standard are being built. So just that quick little update for anything SIP related is actually going to come through StacksGov now. And on the other side, several of the community miners have gotten together to discuss kind of how things are going, and there might be a possible SIP submission in the future. So I just wanted to link that document so some people in our group and kind of give that some exposure as well. And I didn't know, they're looking at, as we're moving along as a community of miners, how can we affect our own open source governance? Will that be tied into the governance that we do? Will it be its own independent thing? I think a lot of those questions are up in the air right now. So I just wanted to put it on the radar so that people had access to it.
Great, thanks, Jason. Yeah, I think the first community miner meeting was a couple of days ago?
Yeah, this was the meeting notes from that meeting, actually.
Okay. And this is open. Is there a regular cadence for these meetings so far?
I don't know as of yet. No, this was just kind of called last minute. Nako was helping us organize it and put together the invite. Frieger was in attendance and he put together the shared doc. So things are a little spread out right now, but I anticipate that there might be some sort of regular cadence coming down the road. For now, I think the best place to watch would be either the mining channel for updates, or if it makes sense, depending on what they're talking about, governance related or anything else, there might be some overlap with what we're doing. Mainly just put it there so we can start thinking about it as a community and see if there's any resources that we can give them specifically on the governance side.
Got it. Thanks, this is great. Anything else from this section, Jason, that you wanted to go over? I think that's all.
Nope, so that's all for me. And like I said, the notes below that were from the Stacks ecosystem call this morning where I gave an update. And aside from that, I have nothing else to add.
Cool. I do have one thing to add. So I think that some folks have been wondering about the state of some community programs like the Evangelist program and the Chapters program, and their future, I guess, with mainnet now having been launched. So we are working on those, and how should I put this? So the Evangelist program is still going. Obviously, we have great Evangelist. I think that there's appetite to sort of revive it and cater it to the active evangelists. So I am personally doing some work on that, and we'll share plans for that pretty soon. And then there's also the issue of the Stacks Chapters program. I mentioned these on a governance call because I think that community engagement and activity will very much fall under the auspices of the foundation. And obviously, as the most active contributors to the Stacks ecosystem, community members will have, whether they're evangelists or members of a chapter, will have a huge say in the decisions that we make. So some things that have been on my mind are, with the development of Stacks Chapters, for example, if they're going to get funded, would they get funded through the grants program? And if they do, would it make sense for them to have a seat on some sort of governance board? Because they would effectively be representing large regions around the world. So these are lots of open questions that have emerged from trying to plan for these programs. And I would love some help thinking through those from the governance group. So yeah, I just wanted to put that on everyone's radar too, but expect some proposals and notes on both of these programs in Discord or on the forum or on GitHub soon. All right, any other questions or topics? Who is that?
Hi, Jenny.
Hey, Juliet.
All right, so finally I have my voice heard. I have a problem with my microphone. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So about the, you were talking about the community chapters or the Stacks chapters and the evangelists. And I thought that was really exciting to talk about the international impact, because certainly when you're looking at governance, we need to look at the different communities have different cultural standards, and I think it's important to bring all that together in looking at governance and as well as evangelism and Stacks chapters. I don't know, I'm just +1 from me. That's about it.
Yeah. Oh, no. Thank you for saying that, because it is exciting to think about. It's also intimidating to think about the potential that has on, the potential impact it has on governance, because, at the moment, we as a community deal with seemingly minor issues of translations of documentation, right? Even that is a huge mountain for us to climb. But what documentation means for the community is access, right? If we don't have a process for working with a group on translating documentation, then you cut off access to that region for building on our blockchain, and that could also hinder tons of progress that we could be having in certain regions. And this is a conversation Jude and I, it's exciting to talk about, like lowering barriers to entry when it comes to access to our blockchain, and those are some pretty meaty and interesting governance discussions to have. And I assume that we'll be knee deep in that pretty soon, now that we have miners on the network, and technically the blockchain is decentralized. So like my thinking is that with the chapters program, I wouldn't want it to be an ornamental thing of like, this chapter functions solely to evangelize stacks in the region. I think these chapters should have a voice and some influence and some say over how we're governing the ecosystem at large. But yeah, those are just some cursory thoughts. None of them are more than half baked at this stage. So it really helps to have everyone here talk through them.
I could speak to when I worked with another developer nonprofit. They had a board of directors that was about 10 people, and a lot of the people were part of what they called, what's working groups here, they called special interest groups. And so people who were on the board, there was representatives from the special interest groups as well as from the chapters. So they were on the board level. So it's a little bit different than governance, but that's how they organized it anyway.
Yeah, there are so many models, and Ryan, I know you've introduced me to certain groups that could be really helpful in this regard. So I will be tapping on you soon. All right, okay. So we're 1 minute away from end time. Speak now or forever, well, not forever. Hold your peace until the next meeting or until you get back on Discord.
I just want to say thank you to everybody for these last few weeks. I know everybody's been involved in different ways. I've learned a lot over the last few weeks just from watching a lot of what you guys do. I know a lot of it's behind the scenes too. It's not always visible. So just thank you kindly for being able to pull this off.
Yeah,
We're here. Excellent conversations.
definitely. Oh, okay. The last thing I'll mention is some of you may have seen your faces on a coin floating around somewhere. These are supposed to be turned into NFTs, and I think that they can be turned into NFTs at some point, but this was one way that we wanted to recognize the work that community members are doing. Obviously don't want these coins to be out in public if you prefer not to have your image shared around, but it is a nice thing to have, for yourself. So a lot of them have been made for those of you on this call, and some of them are still in process. So just expect one of those soon as a big thank you for just being awesome. You guys should see Harold's too from his high school picture. Okay, anyway, great conversation. Thanks everyone, and talk to you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Take
Bye,
care.
everyone.